We are enslaved by speed and have all succumbed to the same insidious virus, fast life, which disrupts our habits, pervades the privacy of our life, and forces us to eat fast foods. Quoted in Parkins and Craig, you must have seen a simple motorway sign that read, "Speed kills, slow down." This sign, with its harsh reality check, serves to remind us just how quickly we can become habitual to speed and its inherent dangers. While sitting in the seemingly safe metal casing of our cars, we collectively race towards our respective destinations. However, the race is never smooth or without delays. The sheer volume of traffic constantly competing for going ahead leads paradoxically to increasing congestion and obstructions. Needless to say, in our determined quest to save time, we lose time, and in seeking to go faster, we seem to go ever slower. In popular culture of speeding, the car and the open highway came to represent personal choice, new freedoms, horizons, and opportunities. But now, this cult of speed is encountered in countercultural movements of slow living that promotes right pace perspective. In late 70s, right pace perspective was inspired by bicycle activists of Amsterdam and Montreal. These activists saw in the bike an enduring symbol for a more humanized pace and way of life. Since then, right pace perspective says the bicycle's speed is determined by one's intention, effort, and endurance through pedaling, as opposed to the comparatively undemanding press of a car's accelerator pedal. In the car, one typically speeds through places in an almost unconscious, automatized, and indiscriminate manner. So when we arrive at our destination, we hardly remember of the journey. Today, in this video, we will see multiple perspectives on how we can learn to live in time more sensually and more consciously. Modern science says the problem of burnout, often precipitated by rising rates of anxiety disorders and depressive episodes, points to a common but often unarticulated conclusion: we are going too fast than required speed. Rather than seeking a comprehensive answer, our shortcut culture typically tends to look for a quick fix, a life hack or mind hack that will lessen the symptoms while leaving the underlying causes largely unaddressed and ultimately untreated. We must understand, we can't go on like this. Something needs to change, and we have to find a happier pace of life. You may be encouraged to live more purposefully through the Japanese method of Ikigai, cultivate flexibility through the practice of yoga, or to take more mindful moments during our day. We do all these with the intention of discovering a more healthy, harmonious, and happier way of life. And of all these trends, one of the most popular has been mindfulness. Today, the Mindfulness Revolution appeared to be the promised panacea to the ills of our age. However, mindfulness can all too easily become just another stress relief technique, rather than the profound, spiritually transformative practice sages understand it to be. Thus, what we needed is a more fundamental shift in our thinking and lifestyles. And philosophy of slow living encompasses all features which constitutes a whole way of life. It recognizes that our way of life is largely determined by our pace of life. Slow living represents a grassroots resistance and a quest for an alternative to the society that adores speed. The devotees of fast life seek convenience, comfort, and instant gratification, leading to the emergence of our contemporary click and collect culture. We may understand the demand for instant gratification as being related to what Freud termed the pleasure principle. From the earliest moments of our awareness, we seek pleasure and the avoidance of unpleasure. For example, being a newborn infant experiencing the discomfort or existential terror of hunger make them screaming for their mother's milk. Freud says, while this behavior is accepted in infancy, but it is increasingly frowned upon as we develop into early childhood, because it is worth considering how much of our childhood was taken up with learning how to be patient, not to push, to share, and to wait for our turn. Therefore, what we term adulthood is largely the end process of a lengthy period of socialization, during which we have learned to delay gratification in a more mature recognition of the existence and needs of others. Freud says, the presence, needs, and expectations of others, coupled with the apparent fact that we simply cannot have whatever we want whenever we want, should lead us to a recognition of the reality principle. Nevertheless, both the reality and pleasure principles that characterized Freud's day have arguably transformed beyond recognition, as our digital age allow for almost every desire to be realized with a mere click on an icon. Now, whatever the nature of human craving, most probably there's an app for that too. So, the question is, do those once fundamental and formative lessons of childhood still hold any truth in an age where we are encouraged to expect everything more and faster? Take example of fast food. We may speedily receive the meal we desire, but does it do us any good nutritionally or even spiritually? In light of current debates concerning both processed and ultra-processed food, you might reasonably ask whether it is still food at all. Thus, slow and simple living philosophy conclude that our digitally enabled consumer culture is not leading towards any meaningful civilizational progress, but toward a rapid regression and potentially culminating in our own extinction. Physiologist says, the convenience of our daily lives comes with a heavy cognitive cost, as we are constantly required to focus and direct our attention to the various competing stimuli that surround us. Ultimately, this constantly demands our attention, from congested traffic to hurried pedestrians to never-ending glowing computer and phone screens. And maintaining this required level of focus to effectively function leads to fatigue, which we further link to exhaustion. Simple Living says, exhaustion results from the fragile rhythm and hastening speed of today's crisis-prone lifestyle. Henry David Thoreau says in his book, Walden, I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life. Today, these famous words became the rallying cry for simplicity. Thoreau lived for 2 years and 2 months at Walden Pond, Massachusetts. Certainly, for Thoreau, this was also a very personal pilgrimage, a spiritual quest to recover something timeless and authentic, to anticipate not the sunrise and the dawn merely, but if possible, nature herself. Needless to say, Thoreau's writings still retain relevance, voicing our desire to escape the rat race, travel off the beaten track, and return to nature and simplicity. According to Thoreau, today, men have become the tools of their tools. The man who independently plucked the fruits when he was hungry is become a farmer, and he who stood under a tree for shelter, a housekeeper, We now no longer camp as for a night, but have settled down on earth and forgotten heaven. It is important to remember that Thoreau was living through the transportation and market revolutions of the 1820s, which were having a seismic impact upon the social, political, and spiritual landscape of America. It was not merely the scale of change that concerned Thoreau, but also the pace of change. Thoreau continued to question the point of perpetual busyness, viewing it as a form of illness. It's high time we must understand, why should we live with such hurry and waste of life when we are determined to be starved before we are hungry? That's all for today's video. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more empowering content. Thanks for watching.